Well, welcome back. The storm is gone. It's pretty outside. Hopefully the bridge building is cleaning up the leaks. And now we were on the 3rd floor, and that's 6 floors. That's a 6th-floor building. So were we on the top of?
It's flat above you.
So there's nothing above us in that area. Okay, fine. All right. So we were talking about that this morning. So so they just have one level to fix, not 3 levels to fix. Well, thanks for coming back. We have a number of folks who are going to be coming and going today, just given the world of schedules. And what I'm going to do is moderate these things, and I hope you don't get tired of seeing me or hearing from me. So what I want to do is focus on the folks who are actually speaking. I've got a couple or 3 quick announcements to make. Number one, for those of you, we dealt with this last night, who came and parked separately, not at the hotel, but parked this morning here at the convention center. Kathy has tickets for you so that you can get out. So see Kathy for that. I want to continue to remind folks to think about who would be good class members for class number 2. If you just kind of jot down names and give them to Linda or Kathy, I guess that's the best thing to do. But we want a long list of suggestions, because this class will be hard to beat. So let's get some good names for that. Third, I want to introduce and welcome Nancy Magnuson Durham, who Randy Larry's not here, and she's representing the university as Senior VP, and thank you for being here. She's going to wander around with us. And then Pete Bird, who CEO of the Frist Foundation, which is a donor and a sponsor, and we thank them for their assistance. And Pete, stay as long as you want. Come join us for lunch if you want to do that as well. So let's start this morning's session. We said we wouldn't do introductions, so I'm kind of not going to do an introduction. The mayor is your classmate. Steve Turner has his bio in here, and he's going to tell you about himself anyhow, I think, right? And so I won't take time from either one of them. What we're going to talk about is how government can make a difference. It's one of our 3 areas of emphasis. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Steve. And I'll preview it just a little bit. He's had 3 major urban initiatives that he's been involved with, maybe more. But one is creating a residence right downtown when it wasn't in vogue. 2 is creating the Gulch. I think there always has to be a champion for something that works, and Steve is the champion for the Gulch. And number 3, being part of what made this troika actually happen, which is the convention center, the hotel, and the Hall of Fame come together as a group. So Steve, I'll let you go ahead and talk about all that.
Thank you. Is this working? Oh, very good. Well, thank you for giving me credit. Some due, but not all together. There's an awful lot of activity that went into making it happen. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to this group and have a conversation with one of my favorite leaders, who happens to be in your class, Mayor Carl Bean. Why on earth was I chosen to speak to this group and have a conversation about government effectiveness, efficiency? Well, urban development is the key answer to why I get to do that. I was a downtown resident who developed a mixed-use building, a residence, office, retail, in a 100-year-old building on 2nd Avenue North. We moved into it in 1995 and still live there. In this morning's paper, in case you happen to read it, there's a picture that shows from the inside of the Civic Center looking outside, and that's actually in Butler's Run. So I want you to look at it because it's so artistic looking, and I'm not that great an artist. I was also the building chairman of the Skirmerhorn Symphony Center. I'm the present chairman of the Country Music Foundation and founder and principal in Market Street Enterprises, which is the master developer of the Gulch. First, let me give you just a little personal background about myself. I was raised in a very small town in southern Kentucky, Scottsville, Kentucky. I hope some of you are familiar with it. It's about 60 miles northeast of Nashville. From 1965 to 1969, I attended and graduated from Vanderbilt University. The
7 years?
No. 4 years. It's almost a shame if I'd have gone 5 years, I could have avoided Vietnam. And actually, I was fortunate. I didn't wind up having to go to Vietnam. I'm a member of the founding family of Dollar General Corporation. I moved back to Nashville in 1986 when we moved our executive offices of Dollar General to Nashville for recruiting and tax advantages. We had a rather onerous tax, and y'all, I don't know about your small towns, but a payroll tax when you have a pretty good sized growing company where you're recruiting executives, all of a sudden it appears that your executives are totally funding what's going on within the small town. And when you wake up one morning, you used to have ex-trooper cars, and all of a sudden you've got brand new cruisers that cost $100,000, and you look at your payroll tax bill, it gets pretty frustrating. So one of the things I would caution you against, if you happen to have a good fortune of having a sizable company located in your community, please be careful of what happens in the taxes, because you can drive them out. So we moved our offices to Nashville in 1986. I left Dollar General in 1988. We had, it was my brother and I and my father were running the company at the time. And needless to say, my brother and I were both rather strong-willed. And so we knew that it wouldn't work, and one of us had to go. And so I drew the short straw and left. And I must admit, I think it really was great for me, because working 80-hour weeks in retailing, you do that, isn't going to make you healthy for all the rest of your life. So that I think has helped me to live at least this long, getting away from the difficulty of retailing. The Butler's Run building. Well, this was an impulsive decision, which this maybe is more information than y'all need to have, but I reached while I was sitting in a hot tub at my residence on Hillsborough Road in 1990. I'm sitting there, and I must admit there was probably a libation involved, but I was thinking about, I'd been able to go to Europe right when I graduated in 1965, stayed in Scotland for about a month, and then toured around Europe. And I had seen the European style, where you had mixed-use buildings everywhere, where you had the owner of the business typically lived above the business and then worked down in the business. And being in retailing, I always thought that really would be nice, instead of having to drive to work and drive everywhere else. So I convinced my wife I'd also wanted to have a penthouse, go up on top of the building, buy the space, build it out. Found out very quickly that Nashville codes did not accommodate that at all. Nashville codes in the downtown area in particular restricted it almost to where all you could have was an office building. You couldn't have mixed use in it. Thank heavens those have changed significantly over the years. I bought the H.P. Lipscomb hardware building at 138 142nd Avenue North. Bought it from Bobby Matthews. I think many of you probably know Bobby. In 1992, I built a mixed-use building using Tuck Hinton as the architects, and that took from 1992 to 1995. Tuck Hinton they were very much involved in the Music City Center, also the Country Music Hall of Fame, But actually, I was in the Bicentennial Mall up in front of the Capitol, and they're just well known to redoing of the Frisk Center, and just a really creative, I think, creative architects and very good. So they did an excellent job. It took from 1992 to 1995 to build the residence out. I estimated at one time about $400,000 additional dollars because of codes, things that I had to live up to. And one of my favorite things to show people when I give them a tour of my house is my shower in my master bedroom, which has a fire sprinkler in it. So if I ever catch on fire in my shower, I'll be immediately put out. But all of that, of course, it has a little bit of humor, but it shows you some of the difficulty because of restrictions that were placed on what you did with the building by the local government, which really thought at the time that the fate of downtown Nashville was to be an office park. Well, that office park started getting pretty empty, and thank heavens we began to get extremely good leadership, local leadership. And Phil Bredesen came downtown and made a major part of his emphasis revitalizing the downtown area. Sort of describing what Nashville looked like downtown in 1995. Like I said, it was an office park with 60 to 70% occupancy rate. Not much activity downtown after 5 p.m. Not much nice activity downtown after 5 p.m. You had peep shows, hookers, unsavory characters on the street. Now, I don't want y'all to think that my moving downtown caused them to move away. What actually I think took care of that particular problem was not government intervention, it was almost economic intervention. You get the property rates up, the value of property up, and that forces them because their building, although it may have pretty good margins, they have to really have low overhead, and so they can't afford the rent that you'd have to pay. The downtown area was viewed by most citizens as a dangerous place to go after dark. Even the Grand Ole Opry had moved from the Ryman downtown to the Opry House in Opryland. Now let's move to the Gulch Project and how I became involved in that. A couple of gentlemen, developers, were working in the Gulch and had negotiated an option with CXS at a very favorable price for about 8 acres adjacent to the railroad track in the area called the Gulch. This is just south of Demonbreun over to Division Street is the area that I've concentrated on. The one problem they failed to address, which typically happens with a lot of developers, is they didn't have the funds to make the purchase. So with about 2 days left on their option, my good friend and real estate lawyer, Joe Barker, got in touch with me and said, look, I don't know if you'll have any interest in doing this, Steve, but it's a good price on some property. And so I talked to him and thought this might make a good investment, that I could just park the money for a little while and perhaps get things started there. But as I got more involved in it, saw their energy and enthusiasm and excitement about what could happen with new urbanism, I bought into it and so started to work on it. First thing I did with Joe Barker was I said, let's talk about what we're trying to get accomplished. I convinced Joe to join me, to leave his law firm, leave his law practice, and join me because I think one of the best ways in the world to be successful is to have a real understanding of your shortcomings and your weaknesses. I'm afraid that I have way too many, but I think I know I have them. And so I can sort of fill in the voids. And Joe really filled in a major lack of capacity on my part in dealing with government and in understanding how you do a development. And so I said to Joe, let's think about what the mission statement ought to be. And I told him that for me, what we should be doing is trying to have a lasting and positive impact on downtown Nashville in an economically viable manner. Those last three words being the most significance that goes to the same sustainability of any effort. How do you become successful in a downtown development? Well, it must be, whatever you're creating, this neighborhood that you're trying to create, must be a great place to live, to work, and to play. What had happened in Nashville was we had to work because we had the office space down there. But then when the new mayor, Bredesen, came in, he developed the arena. He also recruited the Titans. It always tickled me because Phil Bredesen is more of an artist than a sportsman. And he at one time announced that he was getting a little bit weary of being the athletic director of downtown Nashville. But he did a masterful job. And I've heard the story that one time in his office, he had his staff sitting in there and had a big map up on the board. This story is probably not true, but it's so darn good I'm going to tell it this way. And he drew a line around the downtown area. And he said, and that would be 440, 65, all of that, all within the sort of inner beltway, and said, if it's not happening here, don't talk to me about it. I want it to happen here. So that's a big part, that's a big step in the right direction, is when you have leadership that really understands the significance of the downtown area, of being sure you have a center that can be the identity of what this big community is. What are the attributes that I consider needed to be a successful developer? It's an understanding of the community's needs. It's leaders, public or elected, and it's private, volunteers, and it's citizens. A positive attitude. I think this is the most important thing that you have to have. A developer has to be an optimist who sees things as opportunities, not problems. Optimists make good things happen. They believe in the future and they aren't daunted by change or challenges. What do developers need from the government? Well, my favorite phrase that I stole from a guy that works over at Market Street is red carpet, not red tape. And I think that's a very succinct way to put it. Financial tools that promote good, and I really underline good growth, and preserve and enhance the city's tax base in particular. TIF, I think, is a tremendous tool, and it's one of the ways that you can make big development happen. You can make it economically viable, and what you wind up with is a very satisfactory product, and also it has major benefit for the city. But it has to be well implemented, well thought out. This gentleman sitting to the left of me right here and his staff, I think they happen to be pretty much masters at understanding how to use it and how to use it effectively to get good benefits. Now, I don't say that just because he's helped me a lot, but I do say that because I've seen all of these wonderful things happen, and this building happens to be one, because this gentleman, who is a lawyer by trade, understands how things work with the government and how to get it done. And he and his staff are really, really outstanding. So anytime y'all get a chance to listen to him, please pay attention, because he knows what he's talking about. Okay. Yeah, sure will. The hall, this one is sort of a funny story, because this is the first time in negotiations I wound up on what I considered to be the wrong side of the golden rule. He who has the gold rules. Well, the city had the power, Omni had the money, and the Country Music Hall of Fame had debt. But so what was it we had that could help us move forward? We had a wonderful institution, which was the depository of all the artifacts for country music, this wonderful genre of music that has helped define our city. And so with that in hand, the city stepped in, was of major help to us, and we were able to get a campaign. But none of this would have happened without the city. We were actually pretty much landlocked where we were, and so we had to acquire some property behind us that had gotten out of our price range, anything that we could do. Also, the Country Music Hall of Fame has been, its business model works, and we have pretty good return out of that facility. So you've got a staff over there that not only is smart in the museum work, but they're very knowledgeable in economic terms and business and everything else, which was pleasing to me. That's critical. And I think I can just sort of let that go unless somebody, maybe the mayor, yeah, the mayor might. Bet you didn't think I was going to let you have this.
Well, I think it's a treat for everybody to hear from Steve. I say a lot that when you look at the citizens of your city, and to think that we have somebody like Steve who is incredibly generous, incredibly smart, and he really cares. I mean, he's somebody who cares about how it looks, he cares about how the well-being of the city overall, and he is, in my mind, just exactly what you want from a business person and a philanthropic person in your city. He's truly great guy, no question. When I ran for mayor, and really what's guided me for the last 6+ years as mayor, is I've really tried to focus on 3 things, which are, number 1, public education, and I won't talk about that because it's a big subject, but I think that is absolutely the most important thing for our state, and it's the most important thing for our city. I think Nashville as a city is outperforming its peer cities in almost every category, and we need to outperform those peer cities in the education category. You know, we have great news from the state in this last week, the governor's achievement, but we have a long way to go, and I'm a big believer in reform, and I'll leave it at that. In public safety obviously is just essential for a city. You and I can think of cities that you would not move to because of public safety concerns. You can think of places you wouldn't invest. And you always want to make sure your citizens feel safe. That's what makes it work. That's why they go to schools and go to parks and come downtown. And so public safety has been a major effort for us. We've increased the size of the police department to the largest it's ever been. We've had results. We've invested in infrastructure, and I think you've seen crime go down in Nashville for well over 6 years, and it's continuing to go down. And then economic development, which is, I think, vitally important. I came into office with the idea that I wanted to be pro-business, and the longer I've served as mayor, I can't see why you would take any other approach. I mean, part of your job is to create opportunity, to create the possibility for people to live their dreams in your city, but you also have to just be conscious of, as Steve mentioned, about taxes. You want to expand your tax base. You want the growth which is going to create the resources you need to do what you want to do in education, to do what you need to do in public safety, and to do what you need to do in terms of quality of life. So I have, and the people working with me have, I think, we've been pro-business, and we've worked on things such as making codes much friendlier, having one-stop shop where the city had a reputation for being slow. We've changed that, I believe. We've been aggressive in terms of recruitment, which you can debate that back and forth, but when I became mayor, and shortly thereafter, unrelated to my election, the country went into a deep recession. And so we were very aggressive, and we remain aggressive. But what I want to talk about sort of is how the government can work with the private sector to get things done, to move the city forward. And Steve's talked a lot about downtown, and I love cities, and I love this city in particular. And I think our downtown just needs constant attention, like any downtown. You have to invest in sort of the furniture, the things that make the city work and make it attractive. And the big investment we made is obviously this building. This is the largest building project in the history of the city, and I think in the history of the state. And we did this project during the recession. I ran for office saying that I'd build a new convention center. I felt we desperately needed one. We were in a position where we were competing with the old center. We call it now the original center, that we were competing for about 24% of the downtown convention business. With this building, we're competing for well over 80% of it. And it was my sense that Nashville as a city was not living up to its potential as a great convention destination. People really want to come here. And the proof of that was just in the years before the center opened, we've been setting hotel occupancy records almost every other month. I mean, it's very difficult on most weekends to get a hotel room in downtown Nashville. And so I thought it was an investment in also the number 2 private sector part of our economy, which is hospitality, which is about 53,000 people. So we made this investment and then worked with, and the private sector was huge in this. The chamber, Ralph is here, the hospitality industry, people like Steve who just believe in the city and downtown. It was a battle to get it done, but it was worth doing. We had other things that came from this project were, number one, the Omni Hotel, which you're all more familiar with than me now because you slept there. That was a big deal when it happened. We built the convention center, we started work on the convention center, and we didn't have a headquarters hotel deal worked out. And that was probably our biggest political vulnerability in terms of the approval process. And everybody we were talking to, and remember this is in the 2011 sort of recession still period, all the developers and the flags wanted us to publicly finance the hotel. And we just done a huge bond issue for the convention center. And I said we weren't going to publicly finance a hotel, issue bonds specifically for a private development. And it kept going on, and it was probably the thing that made me the most nervous in my day-to-day life was worrying about a headquarters hotel. And then finally we met with Omni, and Omni, as Steve alluded to, is a great company. But the best thing about them, and not the best thing, but certainly the most notable thing is they have a lot of cash. And so, we met with them, and it was, and the guy who owns the company, it's privately owned, figured out what he needed in terms of TIF and a pilot to get it done, and said, here it is, and we said yes, and I left the room and did a little dance in my office, and it was a great day. But then we had, Steve and I had been talking for a long time about the Hall of Fame's desire to expand. And we had this notion that to create a really unique convention center complex, the coolest thing I could think of would be if you could tie in the Hall of Fame with the Omni, link them together physically. And so Steve was on board with that from the beginning and probably suggested it, and we proposed this to Omni. And of course, Omni's a privately held company. It's definitely a for-profit organization, and there was some nervousness about it. And then the culture of the Hall of Fame, which is a nonprofit, is a little bit different than a for-profit. And so there was a long period of where we had to work through the details, and it took a lot of patience from, I think, all the parties involved, and they all deserve a ton of credit. I mean, I think Omni was very fair but tough. and the Hall of Fame stood their ground, and we kept pushing for something to get resolved. So now, when you're in there, if you're in the lobby of the Hall of Fame, you're in the lobby of the Omni. When you're in the entertainment floors of the Hall of Fame, you're in the entertainment floors of the Omni. And I think with that, with this building, and then you created, in my biased opinion, the best, the most compelling convention center complex in America. I think.
Well, it's a great opinion.
Yeah, thank you. So that worked out, and that was, I think, a real good thing. And then, as also part of this project, we redid the street in front of the Omni, which you probably noticed more yesterday, Korean Veterans Boulevard. And we're building a new police precinct up the road on the other side. But I guarantee you, 5-10 years from now, you come back here, that whole area will be transformed. It'll be a whole new place. The Gulch, which Steve was so instrumental in, obviously we're involved with TIF and some other things and different projects there. But that's still an area that's got a lot of excitement coming. I think there'll be some exciting announcements about the end of the Gulch on Charlotte. Something good will happen there, I believe. And I think we've got, we're designing right now a pedestrian bridge which will connect this area, South Broadway, over to the Gulch, which will be pedestrian, bike, and it fits into everything we're trying to emphasize in terms of livability, quality of life, and health. Other investments downtown that I think have been important, it's one we're working on right now and has its first reading in front of the Metro Council tonight, which is the baseball stadium. And the logic in this one is, at Bicentennial Mall, which is state-owned, the baseball stadium would go right up on Jefferson Street, which is the historic African-American community in Nashville. And you have this beautiful Bicentennial Mall, which I think needs to be utilized more. You have, on Jefferson Street, Germantown, which is across the street where all the kind of hip restaurants are. And then you have Jefferson Street, which definitely needs an economic shot in the arm. And my thoughts on the location of the stadium was that with the Hall of Fame, the Omni, Hyatt Place, and there'll be some more hotels, and the convention center itself, the city and/or the private sector have invested about $1 billion south of Broadway. Right? So it was time for us to do something north, in North Nashville. And so this deal will essentially give us a minor league stadium, it's a ballpark, that will also have a park, give us additional greenway space, and 2 private developers, Embry and the Sounds, will build multifamily housing and retail. And I think that area it's already hot, and it will continue to move forward. The other area that I particularly want to mention that gets less attention, but this is sort of I think, a really pure example of how the government and the private sector can work together. In Antioch, the southern portion of the county, where Hickory Hollow Mall, which we now call the area of the Crossings, we rebranded it. When I came into office, Hickory Hollow had a couple department stores left, a food court with a diminishing number of restaurants, had a reputation for, maybe overstated, for being a little bit dangerous, but was sort of an eyesore and was kind of a drag on that area. The Antioch area, the southeastern portion of our county, is by far the fastest growing part of Nashville. I mean, there's nothing close to it. And we wanted to try to revitalize that area. And we had sort of as a model the work that opened when I first came into office that Vanderbilt did at 100 Oaks. I mean, Vanderbilt made a substantial investment in an old mall at 100 Oaks to do the medical center there and preserve some retail, and it really worked. It's a successful business area now. You've had restaurants and banks and everything else open up around it. So one of the advantages, the only one I can think of from the recession, was that real estate was really cheap. And so we were able to buy a big portion of the mall. And we decided that we would put some needed public investment that side of the town did not have enough of. We're building a library, a community center, an outdoor park, and actually a public-private partnership with the Predators to build two sheets of ice there, indoor ice rinks for hockey and for just recreation, and the Predators are going to manage it for us. And that investment has really kind of charged up that area. We're actually, in terms of economic development activity, we're seeing a lot of people wanting to locate up there. Another key thing was we came to an agreement with HCA that they would build their new data center right there. And so you've just seen more jobs go in that direction. We've done the same thing a little bit up in Madison, where, again, because of the recession, we were able to buy the old Peterbilt plant very cheaply. And we put the Metro Transit Authority's area to work on buses up there. And we're finishing up a new police precinct and crime lab there, and which has, again, kind of saved an area, re-energized it. And I think those kind of investments, when you can make them, when they encourage other businesses to invest and keep the city moving forward positively, are good things to do. In terms of how we've worked in terms of recruiting businesses, my sense was, downtown has benefited from, I think Mayor Bredesen did an extraordinary job. I mean, obviously, I always give him a ton of credit because he built the arena, and he didn't even have a team. Which, I mean, going through the convention center process, I can't imagine how hard that was to say, we're just going to build this arena, and we're going to get a team. And he did. And that solidified Broadway. And then Broadway, all the places, I knew something about this not because I'd go to the establishments. I was the public defender for a long time. I knew these people professionally, my profession, not theirs, and it was really run down. And Broadway now with the honky tonks is what makes the city go in terms of tourism and attractions. It is so key. But what I noticed when I came into office, part of it was, I think, the downturn in the economy, but we had buildings that just needed more people in them. And so we worked to bring companies like ServiceSource, Asurion, UBS, which is moving into the old Regions Bank now, and we're working with HCA on something that helped make downtown more active. I think it's a constant project that you can never really stop. You got to have a vibrant downtown. And what we benefited from recently is the number of residents. We're going to push over the 10,000 kind of critical mass thing in the next few years. But people want to be downtown, and that's our core strength, and we'll keep working on it. One other investment I think is important. Michael will talk about the Entrepreneur Center in Rolling Mill Hills, but one thing we did is we worked hard to develop a relationship with the music industry to make sure they felt appreciated and part of the city, and did whatever we could to help them remain strong. I mean, that is not the number one industry in Nashville in terms of hiring, but it is clearly our brand. It's the thing that gives us our edge. It's a thing that people recognize about us. And one investment we made was to build affordable housing for artists. And you'll see it this afternoon. It's called Ryman Lofts. 60 units. You have songwriters, musicians, visual artists, quilt makers, the whole 9 yards are up there. But, I'm a big believer that the cities that are really going to do well are the cities that attract, number one, the most college graduates and create the most college graduates, and the cities that attract creative people. That whole concept of the creative class and bringing in people with energy and thoughts and ideas is absolutely essential to a city. And then Michael's great work at the Entrepreneur Center, and when you see that, you'll be blown away. But that goes this whole idea. Richard Florida, who's sort of the guru of the creative class, when he came to Nashville a few weeks ago, talked about the 3 T's that are essential to a city. And I'll end with this, and I really subscribe to this. Number one, he mentioned technology. Obviously, through the 21st century, the places that are going to succeed economically are going to be very proficient and technology friendly and have economies that reflect that technology. Nashville is certainly moving in that direction. We need to continue moving in that direction. It's vitally important. And then second, talent, which goes to my comments about the creative class, attracting people to the city who are creative, who are college educated, going back to why education is number one. and being a city that nurtures them and is friendly toward their goals, and being a city that creates opportunities, going back to being free, pro-business. And then the third one, which I think is really important, is tolerance. You got your talent, you got your technology, and those folks can move. And like you mentioned about taxes. If people start thinking that it's not a friendly place, it's not a welcoming place, it's not an open place, it's not a place that celebrates diversity, it's not a place where everybody can live out their dreams and have a chance to succeed in life, then they're gonna move. And if it is a place that's tolerant and has all those things that I just described, then people are gonna move here. So that's kind of how I think it goes.
Y'all keep the mic and I'll go up here real quick. A couple of quick thoughts, just, and then we'll have about 20, 25 minutes for questions. First, this convention center, you're not getting a sense of the scale of it, but there's a, what is it, 4,000 seat for dinner auditorium on the top and a 1,200 one next to us. And Charles Starks, who runs the place, will tell you that this room we're in right now, he has 59 more just like it. So
And the best thing, well, the
Go ahead.
ballroom,
And
my favorite room
Go ahead.
is the ballroom. If you get a chance to go up to the ballroom, it's the largest ballroom in Tennessee, and it's designed to be the inside of the guitar, and it's really impressive. And another thing that's cool about the building is just all the windows. I went to a lot of convention centers over the last 10 years, and most convention centers have nice fronts and some windows there, and then they're kind of just straight back with no windows. And this one's different. Wherever you go, you can see light, you can see natural light, and you can see where you are. But I hope you get a chance to at least walk upstairs.
Careful, Mayor, you're telling them which of your children you like best.
and the mayor's not very proud of this either. Second thought, and I'll say this with a little bit of trepidation, but I've said it before around these folks. We've brought together here a couple of discussions, government and the private sector and the nonprofit sector. In Nashville, Steve Turner has talked about TIF financing, tax increment financing, which is used to do the convention center in Memphis and one here and a variety of other things. So on the government front, TIF, that's what TIF financing is. On the nonprofit front in Nashville, TIF financing is Turner, Ingram, Frist. And so we have two of those three here today, and so we appreciate that as well. Questions? Mike?
Mayor, I think it was early 2012 or so. I happened to be living in Franklin at the time, and I was amazed at how you're able to bring the business community and a 45 member council together to support a property tax increase of, what, 50 cents, 47 cents, somewhere in that
It was
neighborhood.
less than that. It was in the 40s.
It was sizable, I don't remember the exact number, but could you talk a little bit about how you're able to get, consensus around that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in my first term, and I think politically and also just common sense, we did not raise taxes. And I think I believe I'm the first mayor to go through an entire term without raising taxes. I mean, in Tennessee, of course, you have the reappraisal of property, and the property taxes actually drop. Property taxes now are lower now than when I took office. But I went through that first term without doing anything to raise additional revenue. And part of it was just recognizing the politics of getting myself established in the office. But also, we're in the Great Recession. And I thought the last thing that I needed to do, or the government needed to do, was to take money from families and businesses to balance our books and unbalance their books. And so it was just sort of off the table. And then as we got into the second term, the economy clearly was improving, and we had real needs. And the way we presented the property tax was to invest in two things, essentially infrastructure for the city, but schools, and schools number one. As part of the proposal, if the tax was passed, which it was, it would allow us to move Nashville from, I think we were 31 in starting teacher pay up to 3rd in starting teacher pay. and that was important. We also were able to identify a whole series of capital needs the schools had. And some of them were fairly dramatic and easy for us to show. And we did a very extensive sort of media campaign to get the word out on that. And then the infrastructure investments, and I probably should have mentioned this before. I mean, I think one of the things that government can also do to help the efficiency of the city and to help it economically is to invest in infrastructure. We wanted to invest, of course, in sidewalks, roads, and things like that. But one of the things that gets lost in all this is, you know, we built this big building, and people always ask about the cost and how's it doing. But of equal size to the convention center, almost equal size to the convention center, was in the first term that we made massive investments and actually increased the water rates and created a new stormwater fee to invest in our water infrastructure. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to redo pipes, to solve stormwater problems that we've neglected for years. And that was easy. I mean, we did a stormwater fee and a water rate increase during the recession, and we're able to explain why we need it. And for business, it's I think one of the best things we've done for long term, and people got on board. For the tax increase, it was schools and infrastructure, parks, things that people care about. We had a good line. It's a chamber. I say this all the time about the chamber, and I don't know, Ralph might think I'm turning him into a liberal here, but but our chamber has been very progressive. I mean, they have made education the #1 issue. They have common sense about the needs of a city to invest in itself. I mean, my line about the convention center was, and I would use it for a lot of other things, is that periodically a city has to have enough confidence in itself to invest in itself. We've got that confidence, and if you don't invest in the city, if you're not putting money back into the things you need, it's going to hurt you later. And so it was, you know, there was some unpleasantness occasionally about it, but it was a pretty big vote we got. We have 40 council members, so I think we probably had 8 or 9 vote against it, but they vote against almost anything I do.
Other questions?
Mayor, I think by any measure you've done an outstanding job. What are the biggest threats or challenges going forward with downtown research?
Well, leave education. I think the biggest thing that we need to be doing in Nashville, infrastructure-wise, is transportation. And this could be the best of battles. Look, Nashville region is going to grow by 1 million people between now and 2035. Right? So if you want to picture this, the Nashville region, this 10-county area, will be the size of what Denver is today. Right? And if you've been to Denver, it's a great city, it's had really good mayors, good leadership. Denver has invested, along with the federal government, millions of dollars in light rail, bus rapid transit, the things that they need to do to make that region move and to work. And I think we're in a similar situation. We're not, you know, Nashville, we can't build roads, we're building more roads, but that's not the only answer, and we can't widen a lot of roads. We need to be investing in public transit, and we need to be doing it now. And I would look at it this way. The people who need it, #1, and I try to ride the bus 2 or 3 times a week myself. When I come into work. When I'm on the Hillsborough bus, these are the people I'm with. The people who are on the bus when I get on out in Green Hills are about my age, probably younger, everybody is these days, and they're going to work. And they're working for the state, they're working for the city, they're working for businesses. Most of them have cards that their employer pays for their transit. You then go down the road and you're picking up students. They're going to Vanderbilt, they're going downtown to switch to go to other colleges, they're going to private schools, and they have cards that their employer pays for them, their schools allow them to use to get on the bus. You then get to Vanderbilt Medical Center, and this is 7:30 in the morning, and there's a big influx of people who get on the bus who are going downtown. And these are the people, there's a lot of people getting on here. These are the people who make the hospital run. I mean, they work in the hospital, keep it clean, feed the patients, do all the things that have to be done, and they can't get to work or afford to get to work in any other way. And there are thousands of people like that in Nashville. And that's what keeps the economy going. And then I would add on to that is that as senior citizens, which I'm not seeing a whole lot of when I'm on the bus in the morning, but the AARP is a big advocate for public transit. As our population ages, and I'm in this group of baby boomers, you want seniors to be able to enjoy the amenities of a city and to participate in the city. And transit is key to that. And then another group we don't talk about enough that I see, not every day, but I see frequently enough, is people with seeing eye dogs, people in wheelchairs, people with some sort of disability where they can't drive. And again, those folks can't enjoy the city unless there's transit. And then you take in this equation of young people who want to live in a dense area and don't want to buy a car. They might want to buy one car, but they don't want to buy two cars, and they want to have transit alternatives. And so, for all those things, I think transit is the big issue for, I would not say Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, right across the board. Regionally is vitally important. Kim and I are working regionally to find answers to transit, but we have got to get ahead of it. And there's a role for the federal government, the state government, and there's certainly a role for the local government.
Mayor, one of the things we're looking at in Memphis, and our mayor has made it clear that we're going to have to do is pension reform. Are you, what are you thinking along those lines here?
Well, we've done some things. We've, just recently we increased the vesting from 5 years to 10 years. And we've made some other changes. The big issue is whether you go to what type of plan you go to. And I think something's got to happen to make everything work. We're in pretty good shape, but long term it's going to be a growing burden on the city financially. But it's a big issue that's out there.
First, I want to compliment you on what you've done in the last 4 years, and there's something you've done that's, I think, transformational that you didn't mention. I'd like for you to speak to because it's part of what I do. This is Music City. It's not Country Music City. It's Music City. And being as I'm in that industry, as you know, there's a lot of folks here that are rock artists and Christian artists and things of that nature. But, 3 years ago you formed the Music Council, I believe?
3 or 4, yeah.
And that was transformational in that in the last 3 to 4 years, the number of musicians and artists and managers and agents and production people that have come from New York and California and Miami to this area because of that endeavor and your efforts and your team's efforts to attract those folks. This is now the hub of music in the United States and indeed in the world. And if you could speak to, I think that's the motor that drives this area is the entertainment industry. And what you did with that council 4 years ago, now when I talk to my peers in New York and LA, Nashville's the heart of it.
Well, the Music Council came from sort of a recognition that music was so essential to our economy, to our identity. I mean, we call ourselves Music City, and we do that for a reason. And I felt there had always been this division, and Steve has been on the council, can speak to this too, is that there was sort of the downtown business and there was the Music Row business, and they seldom interacted. And that has broken down some, but we wanted to do everything we could to promote and strengthen the music industry, to let them know that the city was a friend, and I think the greater Nashville business world was a friend. So the Music Council now is comprised of lots of folks from the music industry, but also folks from other business. And what we've done is we've worked on things like the Ryman Lofts. We have worked on bringing more live music to Nashville. I'm a big believer you can't have enough live music, and we've started a concert in front of the courthouse, concerts over in Centennial Park. We've worked to bring the Grammy nominations here. We have a very good relationship with the CMAs. We started a program in metro schools called Music Makes Us, which is, you would expect us to have the best music programs. We had good ones. We need to have better ones. And the music industry has been great about giving back to make that happen. Warner's operates a music label out of Pearl Cone High School now. And we're putting music classes and electives all throughout the system. But it's just a recognition of how important it is, and it goes back to what, I mentioned last night about the music industry and how they create this entrepreneurial and creative spirit in the city. And it definitely gives us an edge. And you're right about, this, if you look at the residents and the intensity of the music industry in North American cities, Nashville is off the chart. I mean, we're actually more than New York, more than LA, and we've been aggressive about trying to recruit companies to move here who are in music. I mean, the best example I can give occurred before I was mayor is BMI, which moved all their office functions to Nashville, their back office functions to Nashville. Cheaper, it's a nice city, good music environment. There's a huge potential for us to do that. But it's got to, I think, henceforth, every mayor has got to keep music at the top of their agenda. It's such a critical part of our city. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, I'd like to address what you're seeing from this particular mayor that's so critical. He doesn't come into the political arena with a political agenda. He comes in wanting to do what's right for the community. It's something that's been missing, I think, at certain levels of government, especially at the federal level. But to have an understanding of the community and its needs, what its strengths are, how you can emphasize it, to understand what infrastructure means, not just for building buildings, but what infrastructure means for all of the bones that you have to have for the music industry to be successful, or any industry that's here. This mayor gets it, and he also does the main thing you do, which is show up. I mean, there are so many times that leaders just sort of divorce themselves from being in the middle of the fray and up front and making things happen. And that's never been a weakness of Carl Dean's. But I think it's critical when you have a real visionary that sits there and sort of looks at the big schemes. What are the things? And this music council happened to be one. This making Nashville the best in its public school system, the best music training you can have, when everybody else is trying to figure out how to cut music out of their public school systems. And there's this real understanding of what it means to be a human and what a community should provide. And when it comes to education, he has been so involved in it, and I think we are making great strides. Education is one of the most important and one of the most complex and difficult areas we have in Nashville, and I think most of your cities probably are less fortunate and more fortunate in a way. We have tremendous diversity within this community now, and we have over 100 different languages, so many cultures. It's unbelievable. And so a lot of the needs that we have in our school system drive our having to be able to fund a lot of specialized education. And it's difficult enough to fund it. And then you also we have about 70 to 75% of our students are qualify for the free meals. So we've got our future citizens are coming through this public school system, and we have to come up with a way to be sure that they become good citizens. He gets it, and he's worked on it like crazy. I sure hope we can clone Carl Dean. I'll be honest, I tried to talk him into running the third time. And he said, I can't do it according to the Constitution. I said, well, change the darn thing.
They did that in New York for us.
Thank you. Mayor Dean, I've had the pleasure of attending 2 national conventions in Nashville in the last 8 years. They were in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 participants, and they were both held at Opryland. We had a great experience, but it was before this beautiful building was built. Going forward, is there any collaboration that you see happening between the city and Opryland? I'm assuming that's privately owned, but it's still a way to get even more conventions to the city. So do you all work together?
Yeah, through the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we work together, and I can't say that Gaylord was necessarily thrilled when we were building this building, but, in fact, I'll just leave it at that. But it's a different market, and I think they believe that too. I mean, Colin Reed is a friend of mine. He's a great, generous citizen of Nashville, and he runs a great hotel. And then we were talking earlier today about how wonderful they did in the flood recovery. But their market is the sort of the contained convention, the corporate convention where you want people to be together most of the time. We're in more of the trade association. We do have corporate here, but it's a different brand where people are going out and seeing the city at night, or you're doing events all over the place. Gaylord is having a very good year. They've had good years since this project began, even record years, and I'm very confident that we'll both be successful. And I think they are too. I'll say this about, if Gaylord had really wanted to stop this, I don't know if they could have, but they could have come very close, and they never went nuclear. They just, they were concerned about us investing in hotels and things like that. But they've been great citizens, don't they?
Yes, and at the time a lot of this was happening, and especially when we got Omni on board, Bob Rowling happened to be the major stockholder in Gaylord, so there was an interesting dynamic that went on there, because
It added to the fun.
yeah, it added to the intrigue. I don't know whether fun would be right, but Gaylord has always been a fantastic citizen of Nashville. We almost lost the Ryman, the mother church of country music. If it had not been for, really in this case, I think Bud Wendell deserves the credit, stepping in and saying that we couldn't do that, then we might have lost the heart of the industry that has meant an awful lot to us.
And the television show Nashville
Yeah,
is
didn't
very,
hurt us.
very much a Gaylord thing, and that's been great for the city.
With population growth and the increased tourism, how is the city collaborating with nonprofits to address the homeless issue?
We work with a variety of nonprofits, and I would say our homelessness has probably remained sort of in the 1,800 to 2,000 area, and it can go up beyond that at times. It remains an issue. I mean, but there are great nonprofits that do extraordinary work. The Nashville Union Mission, which does not accept any government money, does great work. Father Charlie Strobel does fantastic work. Our Homelessness Commission actually has new leadership from the last 6 months, a guy named Will Conley, who came here from DC, who is really energetic, strong, doing some creative things, working with apartment owners to find spaces where people are, there's vacancies, and to get homeless folks into them. He's very much more getting to the cause of it than just putting Band-Aids on things. So I think he's been the best news in the last few years in terms of homelessness, is Will coming in with his passion and energy. But the nonprofit sector's vital in that.
Mayor Dean, you and I were talking earlier about the wonderful response and recovery under your leadership that this community made after the flood. I was wondering, did you take an opportunity during that recovery and rebuilding time to make some changes in some of your development plans and, not just rebuild, but build better and reorganize your plan?
Yeah, the council took some action, and which we were very supportive of, about limiting the ability to build in floodways, and sort of to tighten up on development along the river and streams. And I think those will have a positive effect. But I can tell you, a year later, people were asking for variances. I mean, it's like a natural cycle. But we've done part of the project we're working on downtown now for the amphitheater and the park at the thermal site, which was near where we were last night. Part of that project includes the building of a removable flood wall. Steve has been fantastic about the symphony. It's a big part of what he's contributed to the city, and along with Mrs. Ingram. And the symphony, which is what, about 10 years old? During the flood, this brand-new, beautiful building that people don't build anymore suffered probably about a third of its value in damage because the water came into the building, did extensive damage, and flooded areas along 2nd Avenue. And so part of this project is to build flood walls that will, I mean, you can remove them, you put them in as the river rises. Now, that doesn't necessarily protect everything. We got to do more work, too, to look at the underground water, because really what hit the symphony so much was the water came from below ground with such force, it literally buckled the floors and went flowing out that way.
If it hadn't done that, it would have moved the building on its foundation and been
Totally
destroyed.
So, I mean, that's an ongoing project, and, you know, one of the, you know, the Corps of Engineers is working on flood mitigation studies for us and for other cities right now. But that's going to be a pretty hefty bill over time.
Okay, I want to thank the panel for this morning. I'm going to get Kathy to tell us where we're headed right now, but when you get, we're going to the Entrepreneur Center, and Michael will tell you about it when you get, but when you get there and you get off the bus, take a look at the view back downtown first, and then look south, and you'll see up on the top of the hill two things. One, Ryman Lofts that the mayor talked about, and two, the old charity hospital, which is now 3 buildings, and they're building a 4th, which are all loft apartments, fully occupied. So, Kathy, where we're headed?
We're going to have time for a break, just a quick break, and then the bus is actually where we, at the Omni, just across 5th Avenue right here. So they're waiting on us, but Ralph has one quick thing to hand out, so let him explain what that is, and you can grab that on the way.
First of all, 2 great people to talk about public-private partnerships, the best in Nashville. And TIF has been switched. Now that we're talking about healthy behaviors in Nashville, we call it FIT. We have a copy of the new vital signs report on this 14-county region that you guys can take with you. It measures our current performance and illustrates some of the history and economic vitality, quality of place, human capital, and regional effectiveness. You won't want to read it cover to cover, it's in all likelihood, but I think for many of you in your area of specialty, you're going to find information in here that is pretty relevant to what Nashville is, but also give you an idea of what benchmarks and metrics to kind of look for in your communities too. So we call it Vital Signs because we do it in partnership with Toronto, and this is announced on a worldwide basis every October 1st, and this was our first year to do it.